I'm Miss Mayhew.
Hi, and I'm Miss Lopez. And in today's video, we are going to apply what we learned from the lab design rubric into an actual FRQ. So let's get started. The FRQ practice that we are going to do today is called the rat urine FRQ. This was on the, it was question number 8 of the 2013 exam. And it's a great example of how to use the lab template that we went over previously on how to apply it and what College Board is going to expect you to be able to do with it. So let's go over it together and then we'll break it down. In an experiment, rats averaging 300 grams of body mass were tested several times over a 3-month period. For each individual rat, urine was collected over a 3-hour period after ingestion of 10 milliliters of a liquid: water, 1% ethyl alcohol solution, or a 5% ethyl alcohol solution. The volume of the urine was then measured, and the results were averaged for all individuals within each group. The data are shown in the table below. So before we start breaking down the question and answering what College Board expects us, let's think back to what we were going over in that lab design rubric and see if we can pick out the different components of that rubric in this paragraph setup shown below. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and check for variables that were held constant. Now, we typically tell students to ask to describe 2. We may find more, we may find less than what College Board gives us, but in this experiment, let's see if we can pick them out. So we're looking for things that were given to each experimental group that remained the same. The first one that stands out to me is that the rats were averaging 300 grams of body size. So the rats were roughly the same size compared to each other across each experimental group. Another thing that I noticed as I was reading is that the urine was collected in a 3-hour time frame. So that 3-hour time frame was the same for each of those rats. It makes a big difference if you how much you urinate first thing in the morning because you've been sleeping all night and you've got all this urine collecting versus when you urinate in the middle of the day. So trying to make sure that you collect the urine at the same time is very important. Another thing that I'm noticing about the rats that was held constant is that they were all given the same amount of fluid, 10 milliliters. It makes a big difference if you order a small iced tea at Sonic and your friend gets the giant bladder blaster, 64 ounce, that's a different amount of urine that's going to be produced. So when you want to make sure that the rats are producing urine or the output of urine is based on what you want to test them, you got to make sure that they all get the same amount of liquid. The next bullet point in your lab design FRQ is looking at your independent variable. So what is it that the scientists can control and change to see if it has an effect? So in this case, what the scientists can control is the percent of the alcohol solution. So the water, the 1% alcohol solution, the 5% alcohol solution, all of that is something that the scientists themselves can control in order to test the effects. Now, what they want to test is to see how the amount of alcohol is changing the amount of urine, the volume of urine that is being produced. So your volume of urine is the dependent variable. That's what they're measuring. They're not weighing the amount of urine. They're not taking a ruler. What they're doing is collecting the volume and taking a measurement of how much urine the rats are producing in response to the liquids. So the only other thing that we would be missing on here is we don't see a control immediately identified, but we will find it, I promise. And our easy point, which is multiple trials. So nowhere in here did it say that multiple trials were conducted. But what you do see is that the results were averaged for all individual within each experimental group. So that tells me, and that tells your reader, that this was done multiple times and they just took an average of all the trials And that's what's being shown in the data table below. So this is a great example of how to write FRQs in paragraph form and still include all the information that the reader needs in order to get full points. So looking at our data table, remember that one of the key things you want to show in the data table is your independent variable and your dependent variable. So we identified up at the top that the independent variable is the type of liquid, not the amount, the type of liquid that was used, your water, your 1%, your 5% ethyl alcohol. And then your dependent variable is the volume of urine that is collected. So in this data table, this would earn full points for showing the independent versus dependent variable in a very clear and organized way. So now we're going to jump down to the bottom part where we're going to look at the actual questions. You've read this, you're looking at the data table, and you're saying, oh, okay, what does College Board want me to do? What question are you asking us? College Board doesn't ask you questions. Instead, they give you a task to do. So in this first part, part A, you'll notice that the word identify is in bold. Now that's very important. College Board will always bold the words or the task that they want you to do. So in this case, they're asking you to identify the question that the scientist was asking. Keeping in mind or thinking about that easy template that we showed you in our lab design video, it's very easy to take our dependent variable and our independent variable and fill them into the two blanks that were given to you. So the question would sound something like, how does rat urine volume change in response to increasing alcohol? All I did was just fill in the blanks of that template. That's why it's such a handy page. If you can print it out, we highly recommend you print it out and keep it side by side as you're going through a course, because you're gonna see and need it a whole lot. If not, that's okay. You guys know where to find it. It's in your notebook. It's there. You can mark on it if you can. Otherwise, just bookmark it and make sure you can find it easily. On a question like this, because they're asking you to identify, identifies are the easy ones. And they're usually only worth 1 point because you're doing an easy task. They're not asking you to identify multiple questions or multiple things. So whenever they say identify, it's usually worth 1 point unless they tell you otherwise. Kind of like on part B. In part B, you'll see that there's 2 verbs. Identify the control in the experiment and identify 2 variables that could have been held constant. So because we kind of already did this at the top, this is going to go a lot easier. So identify the control. Let's think. Remember that your control is your baseline. It's what's normal. So what do rats normally drink? Rats will normally drink water. So water is going to be our control. The second part, when you are identifying 2 variables that could have been held constant, let's look back at the top portion and you can write any of those. You could write all 3, but College Board will only grade your first 2. Anything after that second one that you write down, it will not be graded. So be careful, because you want to make sure that the 2 that you write down are the ones that are probably the easiest points. College Board isn't going to give you extra points or bonus points if you have some, wow, something you saw in Shark Week or Rat Week or whatever. They just go with what's easy, go with what's fast, and then move on, because you will be timed. So in this case, you can either say the size of the rats, the amount of liquid, the amount of time, any of the 3 will do. In this case, you only need to list 2. So pick the 2 that you feel were easiest to remember and then write those down. Now, because College Board is asking you to identify the control, that's 1 point, and identify 2 variables. The first one you list is the second point. The third one you list would have been the third point. So this question is worth a total of 3 points. Can you get partial credit? Yes, you can. So if you didn't identify the control correctly, but you got the other 2 variables, you'd earn 2 out of the 3 points. Or if you identified the control correctly, but you didn't identify one of the variables, you can still earn partial credit that way. In the next part, part C, it says, using the data in the table, describe the effect of ethyl alcohol on urine production. So what I'm seeing is as ethyl alcohol goes from 1% to 5%, in other words, as it's increasing, the amount of urine that was produced also increases. And I think in your math classes, you call these direct relationships. Sometimes students will call them proportional relationships, but that's what looks like what's happening. So to describe the effect of ethyl alcohol, you would say as alcohol volume increases, urine output increases as well. You don't have to identify it. You can identify it as a direct relationship, but if you don't say the word direct relationship, that's okay. They're just asking you to look at the data and understand and interpret it. The last part, part D, you are asked to make a prediction. I'm sorry, that one would have been worth 1 point. On part D, it's asking you to make a prediction on what would happen if another group was given 7% ethyl alcohol and justify it. Now, the easy part is the easy part is making your prediction. Your prediction is going to be when you look at that data table, if you had to fill in the blank with what would be next. If 7% ethyl alcohol was given to the rats, based on the trend that we saw of urine increasing as ethyl alcohol increasing, then your prediction should be any number above 4.7. So you can either specify a number if you want to say 5 or 5.8, or if you just want to say more than 4.7, that would be fine as well. That's your prediction based on what you saw. Or what you see in the data, I would expect that the rat urine output increases. And so any number, just make a prediction, even if it's a number like, well, 4.8, is that more than 4.7? Yes, then it gets the point. Any number larger than what you had, that's within reason. Don't say like 1,000,000 milliliters or some like crazy number. Just any number more than 4.7 milliliters is what you would expect. That's your prediction. Now, how do you justify it? You go back and you talk about the data again. So you would say, as the ethyl alcohol increased from 1% to 5%, the amount of volume of urine increased as well from 3.8 to 4.7. Therefore, I would expect this trend to continue, or I would expect the relationship to stay the same. In this particular question, since there are 2 verbs in here, your first verb is make the prediction, and your second verb is to justify it, this would also be worth 2 points, and they can be 2 separate points. If you wrote, I would expect the amount of rat urine to increase, that's not enough. Increase what? Increase more than 4.7, because that's what we see in the data. So don't give it generic terms. Give it a specific quantifiable number. Even if you think the number's wrong, like how will I know it's 5.3 or 5.8 or 6, or how will I know what it is? Just say any number larger than what we saw in the data table. And then when you're asked to justify it, well, why do you know? Ooh, I said 8 because I like the number 8. Okay, that's not science. I said 8 because based on the trend that I saw in the data table where alcohol increases, rat urine increases as well. And so in this type of question, you can see how you earn partial points on the FRQ. You can see how College Board highlights the task verbs that you were asked to do. Pay extra close attention to those. But our goal was for this video is you can see how that lab writing template not only would help you write a lab, but would also help you in this big portion College Board's goal for AP biology students, and that is taking any lab any experiment, even if it's an experiment we don't do in class or we don't get the chance to, or we've never done, or you've never even heard of this, you should still be able to take this basic template that we provided for you and apply it to multiple experiments and get full credit, full points from any starting point that College Board gets you. We hope this video was helpful for you guys. If you have any questions, don't forget to ask. Make sure you have that lab template design rubric somewhere handy, bookmark it so you'll always find it easily. It will help you out a lot. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Bye.